Hello friends, welcome to this new course titled Complete Import Documentation and Procedures, which is part of the Vijay Global MBA Knowledge courses series. I am Dr. Vijesh Jain. I have very long experience in the area of exports and imports, having worked with several multinational companies in different countries. With the help of my knowledge as well as my experience, practical experience, training experience, I have brought this course to help you understand the entire procedures and documentation that are required for carrying out the import activities successfully. So, the idea of this course is to provide you very practical information and complete information from end to end, from the start to the end. The information that is useful, that is not easily available, and based on the practical experience, based on the examples and case studies that I will be using in this course. So, in this course, I'll be taking up the topics in such a way that the understanding of the whole concept becomes simple for you and more clear to you. So that is the main objective of this course. I will be, for example, starting with the different terms that are commonly used in the import business. These terms, understanding of these terms may not come immediately, for example, in the start, but as you will go through the course, you will learn all these terms, when they will be used, when they will be explained, when they will be defined. So all these things will come in the course. So this is the approach I'll be using in this course. So the idea of this course is to provide you a platform that you can use anytime, anywhere, at your own pace for learning a complete understanding of the entire documentation and procedure for the import, whichever country you belong to, wherever you want to import, from wherever you want to import, you will find the knowledge that is provided in this course useful to you. So, in this course, not only I will be starting with the common terms that are used in the import business, I will be also sharing with you all such topics that you should learn and know before I actually tell you what documents are required, what is the procedure, how the customs clearance is done, what all is involved in dealing with the carriers, that is the shipping company or the airline that will bring your goods into your country, how to deal with the local governments, what are the different local regulations that are there, or the overseas government regulations, what all are involved. I'll be sharing that, but before that I'll be starting with a section that will tell you everything you should know. Things like how do you sign the contract, and when you sign the contract, what all terms and conditions you have to negotiate, and what knowledge you require to be able to successfully negotiate the final contract. So, this is also called the trade agreement or whatever you call it, but you need to know that how do you negotiate the payment terms, delivery terms, commercial terms. So, for example, for that you have to understand what are the different methods of payments, what options are available, what are international commercial terms that are to be used, and how the delivery is effected, what all is involved in understanding those things. So, all those important areas that you must know, I'll be starting with those areas. And then subsequently, I'll be talking about things like registration and compliances that are required to carry out the import business, the typical guidelines and rules of the different governments, the country where you belong to, what are the typical regulations and rules, those I'll be discussing, because you have to work in those guidelines and rules. What are those guidelines and rules, and especially and importantly, why these are there? So that understanding is very, very important. And I'll be also talking about selecting the overseas suppliers and global sourcing of the goods that you want to import. So you may be importing those goods either for resale in your country through distributors, or resale in your country through digital platforms, or you may be importing for use in your manufacturing for re-export purpose, or manufacturing for selling in your domestic market, or the entire shipment that you are importing for re-export purpose for selling to a third country. So the different situation may be there. So I'll be taking care of all the different situations when I'll be talking about these areas, including the typical import transaction framework. So what is the typical import transaction framework? I'll be discussing what are the different international payment methods. I just talked about that thing. So I'll be talking about what options are available for making the international payments, and what are the things that you should know around the payments that you have to make for your goods that you are importing. Also, you should know about the international logistics and supply chain management, the basic knowledge. So I will not go too much into the depth of international logistics and supply chain management. I'll be discussing those things, very basic knowledge that you must have as a successful importer. Then I'll be also talking about the international contracts and commercial terms. These international contracts or trade agreements, they require an understanding of the payment terms, the commercial terms, and the delivery terms, which I just talked about. You should know what are these commercial terms, so-called Incoterms. So I'll be talking about that. These few things, topics which I am talking about, those are the foundations of your understanding of the import procedures and documentation, and those things I will be already covering in the initial sections itself, so that you are already prepared about the understanding of these topics, and these will work as the ammunition for you to be able to understand the more core areas of import documentation and procedure that I will be taking up in the subsequent section in this course. I'll be then covering topics like import documentation and procedures, where I'll be talking about the entire set of documents, important documents, so-called commercial documents that are required, very important for you, for ensuring the quality of the goods, for meeting the local government requirement, and getting the goods cleared from your customs border control in your country. So all those import documentation and procedures I'll be talking about. Then I'll be also talking about what are the import trade governing bodies typically in different countries, and those kind of institutional framework exist in almost all the countries. So all those things I'll be talking about in the so-called institutional framework of importation, or the import control trade bodies. So those things I'll be discussing in this particular section. And also I'll be taking up topics around the understanding about the risk management in import transactions, typical import transactions. What are the common risks that are involved? How to manage those risks? Those things I will be discussing. Then import licensing and classification of the goods, so-called international classification, because the goods are coming from the overseas markets. The origin countries are overseas countries. So you need the international trade classification, so-called ITC, harmonized classification. So I'll be discussing about the ITC-HS code that are used by all the customs and the border control in all the countries. So those things I'll be discussing also about the typical types of restrictions that are there in the form of the import licensing. That may be there in some countries, that may not be there in some countries, but generally, typically, what are the different types of import licensing frameworks are there, I'll be taking up in this particular topic. Then I'll be also talking about some of the very common categories that are imported, how these are imported, the import of the specialized goods, and commodities like scrap, like electronic goods, or import of samples. When we import something, especially we start the process by importing the samples to understand the effectiveness and the specifications and the suitability of the goods that you want to import. So what are the different rules and regulations and the methods that are available for importing samples or even gifts? So different categories of goods, they have different treatment by the customs and border control and the import trade regulations as per the foreign trade policies of the different governments. So those things I'll be talking about. And also I'll be talking about the understanding of the import tariffs and the different costs that are involved in importation. So those things I'll be talking about. When you talk of your import shipment, what are the costs that you have to factor into, like import duties or the freight cost or the trade transaction cost, so-called TTCs, that include your customs clearance charges, port authority charges, and all those costs that are connected with the transaction, trade transaction cost, TTC. So I'll be talking about all these types of different costs that you have to keep in mind when doing your calculations about the landed cost of your goods in your warehouse. So all these things I'll be covering, and many other topics related to all these core topics I'll be covering in this course. So this course is a complete set of knowledge and information that you must have to become a very successful importer. And here in this course, my focus is on the documentation and procedure and things you must know to understand this entire framework of the documentation and procedure. So this is the approach that will be used in this course. I again congratulate you for joining this very exciting and important course for your global business journey, and invite you to watch all the lectures very intently and at your pace, at your convenience, and with passion. Let's go into this course.